for this meeting of the Executive Committee held on the 17th of May 2023. I can see that we have present Councillor Allison, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Brown, Councillors Carmichael, Chalmers, Clark, Convery, Cooper, Councillor Cowan. Yes, I see that Councillor Cowan is present. I see that we're present Councillor Devlin, Councillor Fagan, Councillor Ferguson Miller is participating remotely. I see that we've also present Councillors Hamilton, Horsham, Logan, Loudon, Hugh MacDonald, McCallan, McClymont. I have apologies from Councillor Kenny McCreary, and I see that Councillor Ross Lambie is here substituting for Councillor McCreary. Councillor Leslie MacDonald is present, as are Councillors McGeever, McLachlan, Nelson, Razak, Robb, Ross, Shearer and Walker. And there are a number of officers present at this meeting also. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask in the first instance, agenda item 1, are there any declarations of interest? I'm not seeing any declarations of interest. Before I proceed with the agenda, I just want to notify the committee that I have received a request. I've received 2 requests, sorry, for urgent business. Can I come to the first of those, and can I come to Cleland State? I'm going to bring that forward in the agenda. So can I come to Paul Manning, apologies, to address the issue of the data breach reported to councillors yesterday evening? Paul.
Okay, thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. As we have confirmed to elected members yesterday, we have become aware of a data breach by the Council. Now, generally, the Council has robust information management arrangements, and a data breach is a very rare occurrence. In relation to this incident, a member of staff was responding to a Freedom of Information request and inadvertently sent 2 sets of data, one of which contained information related to individual employees. Now, we understand the recipient of the information was also unaware that the data was attached on an unmarked tab. Now, the error was identified by Council officers, and we immediately disclosed the breach to the Information Commissioner's office, and through legal services made contact with the recipient of the information to require that it was destroyed. We do not believe the information has been accessed by any third party, and furthermore, our legal advice is that the data involved could not be used in a way that would be harmful to employees. However, the affected employees have been alerted to the issue, and precautionary advice is available to them in terms of general good practice in information management. We've issued an apology to all affected staff and made arrangements for any concerned employee to seek further advice and support. We have reviewed the procedures for responding to FOI requests to ensure that no similar breach could take place. Now, if elected members have any further queries, I'm happy to respond to those inquiries following today's meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just following that update, can I ask if there are any questions or points for Paul at this stage? Can I come to Gladys Ferguson Miller?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm aware that the Council's had information and data management processes in place for many years, and this major data breach has clearly highlighted that the processes are not working, and obviously we can't be 100% sure about how this information has been used if it's been there for a month. It could be on the dark web, especially with people's NI numbers and their names. But I hope that there'll be total transparency and that all elected members will be briefed following the Council's investigation into what happened, how this could have happened, and what changes are made to the processes to ensure that it doesn't happen again. And I'm aware that it's been reported to the Information Commissioner, but this will no doubt be subject to a financial penalty. And I just would like to know if elected members will be briefed on the outcome of this too. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I'll come back to Paul Manning to deal with that.
Okay, thanks, Chair. In terms of your questions about transparency, Councillor Miller, absolutely, right? And if there is feedback from the Information Commissioner's Office, that will absolutely be made available to elected members, and I'll report that to them. I need to remind members, this is a situation where we have the treatment of the issue at present under control. We've scrupulously and transparently done the right thing in terms of how we've dealt with this, having identified the issue. None of us want to jeopardise that, and for that reason, I'm limited to the extent to which I can discuss this in open forum, and I know you'll understand that. But if anybody does have any questions after the meeting, I'm happy to discuss them with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I can see there are another 2 questions which I'm going to come to. Could I just ask members of the committee to bear in mind what the Director has just said about the sensitivities in discussing some of these issues in an open forum, and to bear that in mind when you put your questions, and also that point that the Director has just made around the fact that our corporate management team and the Director and his team are more than willing to address any inquiries that people have afterwards as well. Can I come now to Andrea Cowan?
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, it's concerning that there's been a data breach like this, but I'm just wondering, there was a recent data breach, certainly involving many more people, by a well-known car retailer, and I myself was involved in that, and I got an email from them, a profuse apology, but also I was offered free anti-fraud cover for 3 years, which I've taken up, so that if any of my details are used in a fraudulent manner, I'm covered for that, and that Arnold Clark and their insurers would look after that. So I'm just wondering if there are plans in place to do something similar for our employees, and I'm hoping that, if there's nothing in place, that the unions will take this up, because I think it's important that you've got that comfort, that peace of mind, that your details might be out there, but you're not going to have any financial penalty if they are used. Thanks.
Paul?
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Right, and I'm aware of the issue that you're talking about. We have put in place supports. There are going to be supports that are available on the council website. There'll be Q&As, FAQs put up so that people can get information, right, about their position, right? And I'll look further at the issue that you've referred to.
And could I come to Katie Loudon?
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to express my disappointment about communication to employees themselves here. I've heard from a few constituents that they actually heard about this just a couple of minutes before us, so people receiving an email 1 minute past 6, 2 minutes past 6, so emails which were sent after the working day, so presumably not necessarily picked up by employees until this morning. I'm presuming that the council must have been contacted at the same time as our group was, which was by National Press, several hours before the email, to say that this story had happened. So I presume that the council must have known about that at that time. And I'm just wondering why, well, I know we've not been asked not to ask questions just now. Maybe when we have some more information, we could have some more information about why, when it was known that the story was going to break, essentially a risk was created that employees might actually find out via social media or via that newspaper's website when that article went live, rather than checking their emails this morning. Thank you.
I think, sorry, Paul, do you want to take that up? Or?
Yeah, again, right, I'm happy to pick that up after the meeting with the councillor, right? And just to reiterate, the employees affected were briefed yesterday, right? And we were mindful of not putting our employees in a situation where they did find out through the press and getting information to them, right, promptly. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Thank you very much. Can I come now to the second of our items of urgent business, and that is an item requested by Robert Brown.
Can I ask the document be circulated by the officials if they may? This relates to the under-16 concession matter. With your permission, perhaps we can just hold a moment till it goes round, if that's all right. Thank you. Thank you. Do they need one? I don't know. I've got one anyway.
I think we can make a start. I think the document is still being circulated, and there are people who online will receive a copy just shortly. So I think we're making arrangements to send that to people online. So hang on a second. Got a point of order from John Ross. Sorry.
I'm just wondering if this is competent. Our group were told under the 6-month rule that in order to reverse this decision that we would need to call a special meeting of council, which we have done and which follows this meeting this morning. And I don't really see under these terms how this can possibly be competent. Not only does it take into consideration the concessions, but it moves on another subject, which is not the business of this council, but is a reserved matter to Westminster. So I would look for some guidance here from our legal officer. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. This committee does not have the authority to make a decision in this matter. The matter of urgent business, as I see it, is asking for recommendations to be made to the council. Now, it says the next ordinary meeting of the council. You're correct, it's only the council who can make a decision on this matter. And if it goes to the next ordinary meeting of the council, and that's not the one today, standing orders would still have to be suspended if it's within the 6 months since the decision was made in February. So it is competent to ask for this committee to make recommendations, because this committee does not have the power to make a decision on the matter before it.
In that case, can I possibly ask for a recess for 10 minutes, quarter an hour, Chair, in order?
Well, if it's all right, what I would like to do in the first instance is actually hear Robert Brown present what has just been circulated, and then if we have to take a recess afterwards, we'll hold a recess. Is there? Because right now, anyone watching this will not have any idea what we are talking about. We're distributed something in writing, and I think Councillor Brown should be able to speak to it. And I see that I've got. Hang on a second here. There are hands kind of going up and coming down. So if you do wish to speak as a point of order at this stage, could you indicate just now? and I'll take the point of order. If not, I'm going to move on to the business. If the comments you want to make are about the business, I'll deal with them at the point of dealing with the business. So is there any other points of order at this stage? Councillor Ross.
I think we can all read. I don't think we need to listen to Robert going through it. I think we can judge on the basis of what's been said here, whether we're in agreement with it or not. I don't think we need to go through that situation. Thanks.
You don't know what's going on.
I think there are people watching this committee at home who do not know what we are discussing. And given the previous administration were so keen on webcasting these meetings, we're going to proceed with the business. I have Gladys Miller and Katie Loudon. Are these points of order? Because if they're not points of order, they are matters for the debate to follow. Right, okay. Katie Loudon I'll come to, and can we establish if Gladys Ferguson Miller is making a point of order? If so, I'll take her afterwards. Katie Loudon.
Okay, two things, Chair. First point of order, those who are participating remotely still don't have a copy of the paper. Second point of order, when this went through, the concessionary rates went through full council, we were told that there was going to, afterwards in a press release, we were told that there was going to be a consultation. Is this informed by the results of the consultation, and why are we being asked to make a decision on that before we have that? Is that going to be presented to us beforehand?
Right. The second, I think, is a matter for the debate. The first is the point of order in relation to the document being circulated. I said earlier that we were in the process of sending that document. I now just received a note to say the document is now being sent. Can I come to Gladys Miller? Gladys Miller is no longer Gladys Ferguson Miller. Sorry, Gladys, it's Miller that appears here, but she put her hand down. I assume that's because she was going to raise the issue of having the document received at home. If there's nothing else, and given the urgency of the business, because there is a board meeting later today, I'm going to come to Robert Brown. Robert.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. This is an important item, there's no question about it, and thank you for taking it. It's a matter of urgent business because the clubs do need to have clarity as soon as possible for the position, and because we need to work in tandem with the Independent Trust Board who meet this afternoon. Now, colleagues are, of course, aware of the ongoing and substantial pressures on the Council, more particularly on the Leisure Trust and its finances. And that was a matter of anxious consideration for all of us at the February budget, when the Council accepted the Trust proposal to reduce the under-16 discount from 75% to 50%, bringing the arrangements broadly in line with those in other Council areas. SLLC agreed to defer this change from April until June, following concerns raised, which we're all aware of. I have myself attended both of the two engagement sessions held by the Trust so far, which were attended by a variety of primarily swimming and football clubs. And they were well-attended meetings, and there was a good range of views I think were put forward at these meetings. I also, for what it's worth, chair the Cambuslang and Rutherglen Sports Council, and I've also, separately to that, had the opportunity to speak to a number of representatives of local clubs in my general area. So I think I'm reasonably up to date, as no doubt other councillors are, with the issues that arise out of this and the pressures. Now, the primary message I got, and I think it's probably reflected by other people's experience as well, and certainly was reflected in the engagement meetings by the Trust, was that the timescales given for the changes were too short to enable clubs to plan properly. I'm very pleased, therefore, to be able to put forward the proposal this morning, essentially to phase in the new concessionary rates over 3 financial years. I think actually this is a good settlement of the issue if it can be taken forward, which is perhaps more favourable than the clubs anticipated, and which more importantly will enable them to continue to provide excellent sporting and life-enhancing opportunities for South Lanarkshire's young people. Now, I would remind colleagues that the Council agreed to provide transitional funding of £1.5 million to the Trust to help them make the changes forced on them by the explosion in energy prices and the continuing high rates of inflation. And let's be very clear about this, resulting at heart also from the cut in the share of the Scottish budget coming to councils in recent years, down 9% in real terms against an increased Holyrood budget of 4%, again in real terms. Now, in that context, we're long overdue a decision by the Scottish Government on whether to pass on the swimming pools money, the Barnett consequentials, following the creation of a swimming pools fund by the UK Government. And today we're again urging the Scottish Government to act urgently on that matter. and it would be of some help to this whole position if that could be done. It'd be very nice too, although we don't have the same powers over it, if the big energy companies who benefited and made such enormous unmerited windfalls from the energy crisis used some part of that windfall to support municipal leisure providers like ourselves who are at the sharp end of this problem. Now, there are, of course, potential funding implications of the proposed phasing, and these need to be worked through between the Council and the Trust and reported back to the Council in due course. The meetings organised by the Trust were focused on providing advice and support to clubs to grow their capacity, increase their revenues, and access external grant support where appropriate. And I think it's perhaps a pity that more of my councillor colleagues didn't take the opportunity to be present at some of these meetings as well. I hope the Leisure Trust can follow through on the meetings with a pack of support materials for the clubs and an easy contact for advice going forward. Now, Chair, I'm very clear that this issue has not been helped by the lack of public information and understanding, not just at the budget, but long before, as to the scale of pressures facing the Trust. I don't believe Trust minutes have been published since before COVID, and the time has come, in my view, for the Trust to put in place a publication arrangement under the Freedom of Information arrangements, under which board papers, agendas and minutes are available online in the same way as council papers and minutes, or minutes indeed of the IJB, both of which have the same issues of confidentiality on some issues and important public aspects on others. Decisions of major public significance are being made, and the background to them should be in the public domain. And finally, if I may, let me thank both the Leisure Trust officials for their work on this matter, difficult work in some regards, and also our sports clubs throughout South Lanarkshire who contribute so much to giving our young people opportunities to show their sporting talents or just to enjoy sport. I move the recommendations in the note.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. And I have Councillor Devlin joining us remotely. I believe she was going to second your motion, but Councillor Devlin, can I come to you?
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second this motion. The other thing I would like to say with regard to the governance of the Leisure Trust, we will be having talks to ensure that all papers, all trust meetings are all open and transparent to the public, to yourselves. It's ridiculous that this situation has came about, that yourselves and others have got to ask for a freedom of information request to see these types of papers, to see these papers. This came in with Peter Craig in the previous administration to hold everything private and confidential, so I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Devlin. Are there any other contributions to be made at this point? Councillor Lambie.
Thanks, Chair. Just to support the statement made, the transparency is really key for the Leisure Trust. And in the past, you know, things have been put on the agenda in the Leisure Trust to surreptitiously prevent FOIs, and I'd like to see that practice come to an end. Thanks.
Thank you. I find myself very much in agreement. Can I come now to Councillor John Ross?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I still really don't see how this cost can possibly be considered as urgent business today, especially when we're discussing this subject following this meeting at a special council meeting. However, that's by the by. I still would request a 15-minute break in order to consider the information we've just been given by Councillor Brown. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think I will run through the contributions I've got, and then I think I will pause for a short break. I think that'd be fair. Could I come to Councillor Robb?
Yep, really concerned about the process here. Initially, how it all happened, the consultation process, and now as well. I think the paper gives inadequate scrutiny, that we can't see the consultation results. It doesn't mention over 16s, which have had their prices up 60%. I think it's too rushed. I think we need to see the consultation results, and to be fair to clubs, and take into account the full results so that we as councillors can give proper scrutiny to this.
Okay, Thank you, Councillor Robb. Can I come to Councillor Razak?
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Maureen and Ross, what they said about the clear and utter transparency with leisure. I think the other thing that needs to be done is the minutes need to be fully minuted. Just now, that's not the case, and I think that needs to be done as well.
Okay, well, thank you. If that's the case, I think from my own point of view, I just want to make a few remarks. Firstly, I would thank Councillor Brown for bringing this forward today on behalf of the administration. I know he has been attending the engagement events and has been listening to constituents like many others. And we said this administration would listen as well as lead. And that is exactly the approach that has led us to this point today, still balancing the budget in the face of enormous financial challenges, but doing so in a fairer way. And I think it is important to contrast that genuine engagement with clubs in the sports community and the people out there who are concerned about grassroots swimming and football and sport with some of the more see-through campaigning efforts that have come from one of the political groups in this council. And I would also remind the committee of the following. First of all, that South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture, that is a board on which SNP councillors sit, and requested permission to adjust concession rates to help balance a budget crisis and limit the need for greater cuts to services and facilities. You will recall in February, the SNP group moved an amendment to item 2 of our business at the full council meeting on the 22nd of February. That was the budget, and that would have exacerbated the budget gap faced by this council next year by at least £4.2 million. They subsequently, I'll take a point of order when I've concluded my remarks, subsequently moved an amendment at item 6 that would have exacerbated the SLLC budget gap by approximately £600,000, on top of all the cuts and rationalisation that they've already had to endure. And I think we also have to remember that it is those financial pressures and the inadequacy of budget settlements given to the council that is the major driver behind price rises and service cuts and rationalisations in this council and across local government. I would also ask the committee to familiarise themselves, if they have not already done so, with that Budget SOS campaign mentioned in the motion. And also the comments of COSLA's community wellbeing spokesperson in support of that campaign, who said earlier this year that rising inflation and energy costs, alongside reduced visits and memberships, all add to the pressures already being felt and affects the sustainability of these services. The sector may be forced to introduce or increase charges, and this sits uncomfortably when family finances are under pressure. She's right. And that's why she was lobbying for a better budget deal for local government. And finally, I would ask the committee to reflect on the fact that those members of the Scottish Parliament who have condemned the new concession rates voted for the very budgets that every party in local government condemned as socially harmful at a COSLA level. It's normal for political parties to have disagreements, but they've got to be honest disagreements, and we've got to bring forward solutions when we face them to get us through the tough times that we face just now. I think the motion brings a solution. I think it brings balance to budgets, and I think it brings openness and transparency to leisure in South Lanarkshire. And that is something that has fallen away over the 5 years of the previous administration. But most importantly, I think this motion is honest about the financial challenges we face, the role of central government in rising to them, and need to balance the interests of financial sustainability with doing the right thing for our clubs and our communities. I think it has been put forward in the right spirit, and I hope the committee will agree to it. Before I move to a short break, I have 2 points to take. One of them is a point of order from Councillor Loudon.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, since my point of order wasn't taken in a timely fashion to relate to the matter it was, I'll just make a few points when I have the opportunity to speak. First of all, it's completely disingenuous, and the Chair knows this, to speak about people's roles on boards such as SLLC and to compare that to how they then make decisions in the council chamber. As he well knows, because he has members on the board from his own party as well, they have a legal obligation to act in the best interests of the board, and they're wearing a separate hat at that time. As for the comments about the SNP blowing a hole in the budget, this is very selective reporting. Can I remind everyone that we had a very similar situation recently where a decision was taken in Council, backed by the administration, to go back on the recommendations that had been given by an external board, therefore causing a hole in their budget, as they are putting it. That's what our job is in here, is to make decisions which we think are in the best interest in the public. And also, had Labour accepted our amendment in the first place, we would have put forward more funding for SLLC, which would have covered this cost, meaning that we didn't have to make the decision about concessionary rates in the first place. And as for the continuing comments about funding from the Scottish Government, we have agreed, our party, there's cross-party support at COSLA calling for fair funding for local government. We know that. However, the administration have spent the last few days tweeting around the place, putting all over social media that they support the Scottish Swimming campaign, Save Our Pools, which I do as well. I think it's extremely important and they make some very, very good points. But let's not misrepresent what they are saying here and where these budget pressures are coming from. In some of the campaign information which Scottish Swimming have put out, they have blamed a lot of the pressure which local authorities are feeling because of the UK government's decision on the energy bills discount scheme. This was taken on the 9th of January. Energy prices for swimming pools and leisure centres have doubled. We're talking about £50 million up to £1.2 million last year. This is a matter that's wholly reserved to the UK government energy legislation. This is where a huge part of this problem has come from, and it is only the UK government that can sort it out. And yet again, we're sitting in here and it's Scottish Government bad, Scottish Government need to do this. All that this administration do is tell the Scottish Government to pick up the pieces, and these pieces this problem has been created in the first place by the UK Government yet again, and that's why we're in this position.
Okay. I think the problem is we're picking up the pieces from Scottish Government funding cuts, but we will come to Councillor Chalmers.
This is again a point of order, Chair, and it's the second time that you have used a COSLA spokesperson's mandate. Because you know, as COSLA spokesperson are mandated on behalf of all 32 local authorities to speak on matters. Again, those spokespersons in their different capacity with a different hat on might take different decisions in the interest of the body or the group that they're involved in. So can I just remind everyone of that? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I come to Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. Correct, it's the Scottish Government's funding cuts that's making this near impossible for any council to function. But if we maybe stop wasting money on ferries, and some of these are not even ready for consumption to cross the bridge or anywhere, and put that money into local government, I'm sure we wouldn't be sitting in this stage. But just for clarity, the UK Government's budget was up 4% in real terms, not a cut. The Scottish Government cut it, and that's where the difficulty lies.
Thank you. If I'll just suspend the meeting until 1:45, it gives everybody 10 minutes in addition to what you've heard today to decide your positions or any other. Okay? over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just clarify that we've all returned to the meeting? I see that we have Councillor Allison, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Brown I see is here. Councillor Carmichael. I don't see Councillor Carmichael at the moment. Councillor Chalmers, just checking that she's participating remotely, and that's the case. I see that Councillor Clark's here, Councillor Convery, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Cowan, Councillor Devlin, just checking, yep, participating remotely, Councillor Fagan, Councillor Ferguson-Miller, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Horsham is back, Councillor Logan, Councillor Loudon is back, Councillor Hugh MacDonald is also back, Councillor McCallan, Councillor McClymont, again apologies from Councillor McCready, and Councillor Lambie is here, Councillor Leslie MacDonald is back, Councillor McGeever. I'm looking for Councillor McGeever and not seeing him online. Councillor McLachlan's back, as is Councillor Nelson, Councillor Razak, Councillor Robb. I don't see Councillor Robb. Councillor Ross is back. So of those who were participating prior to the adjournment, I don't see Councillor Carmichael, I don't see Councillor McGeever, and I don't see Councillor Robb. Thanks. I'll keep looking.
Right, we think we've got some Wi-Fi issues with Councillor McGeever. I'm just...
Or we can indicate.
Right, okay. If that's the case, is there another position from the SNP group?
Thanks very much, Chair.
Wait a second. Wait. There you go.
You should have received an amendment from ourselves, but I must say at the outset that our group are not prepared to back down on our promises to local clubs and groups. The administration, taking their opportunity today to put this forward, could have done this at a much earlier date, engaged with local clubs, and we would have had an entirely different outcome. But they chose not to do that, and this manifestation today is just a way to try and get round their incompetence at that time. So, as I say, we put forward an amendment, and we will still go ahead with our proposal at the special council meeting after this. Thanks.
So could I don't think we have a copy of that amendment, and so are you...
I can
sent it on. Okay.
I can certainly read it out if.
Well, it would be helpful,
right.
Given what we said earlier.
The SNP amendment: delete recommendation 1. Add after point 6. Council notes with concern that the UK Government's decision on the 9th of January to exclude community leisure from the energy bill discount scheme. Council notes with alarm the figures published by Scottish Swimming that energy prices for swimming pools and leisure centres have increased from 500 million in 2019 to 1.2 billion in 2022. And given that energy price regulation is a matter wholly reserved to the UK Parliament, Council backs Scottish Swimming's Save Our Pools campaign and the organisation's call for the UK Government to support the sector by taking action on inflationary energy costs. As such, Council calls on the CEO to write to the relevant UK Minister. Thank you.
Okay, just to confirm... Hang on a second. We're just checking to make sure we get the motion circulated so that it's fair that both are treated equally. Can I just check... Councillor Ross is a seconder, sorry. Councillor Loudon. And we're going to get this circulated, but are there any other contributions at this point? Or amendments, indeed, at this point? No, I've got Councillor Allison wishes to speak.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering if one of the items here is strong enough. Quite agree that we do need clarity in agendas and minutes from the Leisure Trust. There are a number of reasons have been highlighted as to why that's not happening. A lot of it is to do with the security of some of the information. Wouldn't it be better if we actually said that even if they had to redact some of their agenda or minutes, that it would certainly be better to publish them that way rather than not publish them at all?
I think Councillor Allison's made a very sensible point, and I think that's probably implicit in the suggestion that Councillor Brown's put forward. Most public bodies that regularly publish their minutes and board papers would exempt information that has to be redacted. The issue is that should be the exception and not the rule, and I think that's the point that Councillor Allison's making, and perhaps Councillor Brown wishes to come to when he sums up. You want to come in on that? Just what the Chief Executive wanted to come in on that.
Sorry, Chair. I was just simply say that I think it's implicit within this. If the Leisure Trust Board decided to publish their papers on a routine basis as noted, they would be subject to the same legal restrictions as any other public body. So they would have to do that in effect. So it is implicit here. I don't think you would need to amend the wording in the motion to do that. Thanks.
What's implicit to some people in some places isn't implied elsewhere. So.
I'm just going to check to see if this motion has been received and amendment has been received and circulated. I've not seen it as yet. Hang on.
Chair, I can advise that the amendment has been received. I'm having some technical difficulties with my email in here. I've asked a colleague to send it, so I'm hoping that it has been sent. If not, I'll pursue it further. My other colleague is away to take copies so that that can be distributed to members, so it's in hand.
Okie dokie. I think from my own point of view, I just want to pick up one of the points that came up in the debate, which was in relation to the community alarm charges, the decision the council took in relation, or the committee took in relation to community alarm charges. And that is true. We did take a decision that would have financial consequences for another body, but we also set out how we felt that body might seek to address those challenges, and we'd engaged with our official level, engaged with that body. And I think in this particular instance, there can be no doubt that the consequences of another £600,000 of cuts to leisure and culture, given the crisis that they are in, that I have to say the SNP amendment dealt with some of the energy issues that contribute to the crisis, the utility bills of up to 200% that they face, a £600,000 gap in the leisure and culture budget would mean cuts and closures to leisure facilities and services that I think would be politically unacceptable to the council, and that alone is reason enough to reject the SNP motion that's coming before the council later today. Councillor Loudon wants to come in again. I'll take one more from Councillor Loudon, and then I'm going to come up to Robert Brown to sum up, and then we will proceed to a vote once everyone's had the chance to see that copy of the amendment. Councillor Loudon.
Chair, would you agree that since this has obviously been a political choice to bring this today, that since you're taking action before or the administration is attempting to take action before the full meeting here, that you could also have taken action to look to actually bridge that gap by looking at other funding options, such as taking money out of the council's considerable reserves?
I think we have circulated at the time of the budget and could circulate again the fact that the council's considerable reserves, once you account for what is already committed, actually aren't quite so considerable. And indeed, we have a plan right now to draw down on reserves over the coming years as part of our budget strategy to deal with the horrific cuts, in real terms cuts, that the Scottish Government is imposing on this council. And the other point I would make is that this is a phasing proposal because there is a recurring cost in here to budgets. And if you read Audit Scotland's report today, you would see solutions such as reserves are being highlighted as an area of concern because they are one-off solutions and that local government is increasingly relying on one-off solutions to deal with a recurring budget crisis. I think if that is the level of fiscal literacy we're going to get from the SNP today, then I have to say it is no wonder they are in opposition, and a long may they stay there. Councillor, I've got more contributions. Can I say this? I've said it already. This is absolutely the last set of contributions that I'm going to take. So the three speakers I'm going to come to in this order are Councillor Robb, Councillor Clark and Councillor Robert Brown to conclude the debate, and then we will proceed to a vote. Councillor Robb.
Just pointing out that the opposition has accepted the point 2 about no detriment. So to make the point about blowing a hole in SLLC's budget is not right. I think we put solutions back to SLLC and see what they come back with in terms of solutions and see what happens once after that. So it's just to correct that point. And in terms of deleting point 1, I think that's correct, but I think the point, if the motion as the administration is putting forward, that will do nothing for the over 16s issue, which I've been emailed about frequently, whose prices have gone up. And those people are still in full-time education, yet they're being asked to pay a 60% increase in prices. The motion from the administration doesn't address that point, and it doesn't address the transparency issue about the consultation results. That's what I wanted to say. And it does pick up on the energy, transparency and the longer term capacity building that I emailed David Booth about, and SLLC as well. So I'm pleased to see those aspects, but it doesn't deliver on the over 16s.
Thank you, Councillor Robb. Can I come to Councillor Clark?
Thanks, Chair. I do have to say, if all the other parties think this was so bad, why on earth did you vote for it in the first place? Chair, you've just mentioned fiscal literacy. You've had, you're hearing from some of Labour councillors, they didn't even know what they were voting for, they didn't even know the implications of the vote in the first place. That doesn't scream fiscal literacy from the Labour group to me. And in regard to the consultations was mentioned, or engagements, they've been absolutely woeful, and we've been hearing from clubs themselves that these consultation events, the staff there, the concession changes weren't even on the agenda, or they weren't the main point of the agenda, and to have only 2 of them, both in Chatelet, it doesn't scream consultation to me. And you also mentioned that see-through campaign. This has been a campaign from our clubs, led by our clubs. This hasn't actually been led by the SNP. This has been led by our clubs who have been saying that this isn't acceptable. It's the kids who said it's time to go, Joe, not us.
I don't think that requires any response. Can I come now to Councillor Brown to sum up the debate, and then we'll proceed to a vote?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. It's normal in these things to say there's been a good debate and we've had good points made in it. I don't frankly think I can say that against the contributions that have been made here. Let's not beat about the bush. This has been a problem. It's been coming down the line for quite a long time now under the previous administration, which it wasn't in fact dealt with. Let's also be very clear that we're facing a very severe financial crisis. The SNP group are party to what's going on in this regard. They know the extent of the problems the Council faces in future years, and they know the reality of the position about the so-called reserves. There is very, very little fat to deal with in this particular regard, very, very little scope for manoeuvre. And I think people who have been involved in this from the beginning are well aware that the Leisure Trust had enormously difficult choices to make, as indeed the Council did. And if this wasn't dealt with in the way it was taken forward, then there will be other consequences of it, which the opposition quite simply are failing to live up to. Now, I mentioned earlier, I've been to the consultation meetings. They were effective, they were reasonable. People had the chance to say what they wanted to say. They put forward very many of the points that have been put forward, I think, over the course of time here. And to be quite honest, the very first meeting I had with the club about this, the issue that was raised with me was one of phasing. And I think that's what we've dealt with in putting forward here. I think it's a generous and potentially satisfactory solution to a very difficult sort of problem. Now, Mention was made of over 16s by Councillor Robb, and that's really not the subject of the debate this morning. I've personally had no representations whatever about that aspect of it, and as far as I'm aware, there's been very little, if any, has come into the administration or the officials generally about that particular aspect of the matter. Transparency is actually quite an important issue that lies behind this. I think it's probably fair to accept that there were deficiencies in the way in which the Trust has been able to relate to the Council in discussions about these sort of matters. The Trust is an independent body. It has to operate in that way. It has got to deal with its own budgets and so on and so forth. But the fact we can't even see, even on an FOI request, the precise details of the way in which the Trust is handling this and the actual budgetary constraints it's under is a handicap, to say the least, and be able to deal with this satisfactorily, both for us and for the public, and that really has to be dealt with. And I think Alex Anderson is quite correct in saying that there has to be a clarity in terms of what's actually put forward there. There's provision to deal with the redacting of confidential information. The Council has this problem frequently from time to time on licence committee minutes and things of that kind. The IJB has it in much more dimension than what the Leisure Trust does. And in fact, there's an obligation under the Freedom of Information legislation to have a publication scheme for these sorts of matters on public bodies. And I think it's about high time that the Leisure Trust dealt with that and dealt with in terms of the publication of the minutes and the papers in an appropriate fashion in that regard. That's an important underlying issue. But to come back to the main point, which is the under 16 discounts, there's no question at all that there are challenges to the clubs because of this. Nobody argues that at all. What we're trying to do with this amendment is to try and make sure that this is manageable by the clubs in a way which allows them to continue to deliver the excellent work that they do in this particular regard. My understanding is that this will be acceptable to the vast majority of clubs in South Lanarkshire who are dealing with these particular issues. There's a number of things that were available and were dealt with at the meetings about how to build capacity, about the use of gift aid, about a number of other things you can do in terms of grant applications and capacity building. These, I think, are hugely important things anyway, and the best clubs are doing quite a lot of these things in any event. But they're not, in essence, different to the problems that are facing clubs in other council areas, where there has been for some time a somewhat less generous arrangement than we've had in South Lanarkshire. Nobody wants to put forward proposals to do with a reduction of discounts or increasing of charges that affect important clubs in our locality. This has arisen because of the pressures that the Council and the Leisure Trust have got on them. And I do think, actually, that the comment that was made about financial literacy on this matter is really quite important. At the end of the day, these sums have got to add up. There's a way forward on this one. It works for the Trust, it works for the clubs, it works for the Council. It will have a financial implication, and that will have to be dealt with in due course once we've worked this one through. Can I therefore simply move the motion, commenting, if I may, that the SNP amendment deletes the core bit? We end up really, if you look at what's involved here, with all the rant bit, if I can put it that way, the bits about the UK government, the Scottish government, the swimming pool fund and various other things like that, that's all left in. But frankly, that doesn't solve our problem. We've got to deal with the problem as it stands. And therefore, that's why the phasing is important. That's why it's going forward. And I think the SNP will not exactly be marked with credit by opposing a reasonable and realistic scheme for solving the problem for the clubs. I beg to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. I'm going to move now to a vote. Can I ask, is this a point of order?
Roll call vote on this item.
Hang it.
Today, the only reason we're discussing this is because of the special meeting after this. We have been told by Robert that all sorts of information has been supplied, that clubs are in favour of this. We have seen none of that information. This has been a rushed item today to try to turn about the situation.
Sorry.
Special meeting. And I would ask for a roll call. Thanks.
Right. I'm just... Yeah, just bear with me a second. I'm going to ask Councillor, I'm going to ask the monitoring officer just to advise, because I'm conscious of the the issue with doing this online as well. So I'm just going to get some advice from the monitoring officer. There is a request. Do we need to accept the request?
The chairperson decides which is the most important, the most appropriate way to take the vote. And the vote can be taken either using the electronic voting system, calling the roll, ballot or a show of hands. Any member can object to your decision and ask for the vote to be taken by calling the roll, and in that case, at least 1/3 of the members present have to agree with the roll call vote.
We'll take a roll call vote then. So the options will be I'll pass over in a second. The options will be the motion that is with Councillor Brown and the amendment from Councillor Ross.
Thanks, Chair. Moving to vote by roll call. The motion moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Devlin, is as circulated, as is the amendment which was moved by Councillor Ross and seconded by Councillor Loudon. So I'll call your name, and if you could indicate whether your preference is for motion, amendment, or whether you wish to abstain. Councillor Allison.
Hang on a second. Sorry. Is this a point of order?
Make a point, Chair. Point of order, yeah. Let's call it a point of order. This system makes it a roll call vote anyway. Everybody's vote goes onto the screen and it's all recorded. It's a waste of time, Chair, in my opinion, and it's grandstanding by the SNP. I don't think it's necessary.
Sorry, hang on a sec. I'm not going to have a debate now on what form of vote we take. I agree with a lot of what Councillor McLachlan has said, but the fact remains there's been a request, and I don't think there is any reason necessarily to reject the request. And I think it would just prolong the meeting if we end up having a debate about the form of voting. At the end of the day, nothing we are doing today is going to stop members having their say on which of the two propositions they would prefer. But so can I just... right, point... I've got 2 points here. I've got a point of order, I think, from Councillor Horsham, and then I've got one from Councillor Loudon. So just... I'm going to come to Councillor Horsham, and then I'm going to come to Councillor Loudon. Councillor Horsham.
The request for a roll call vote is on the website. What do they know? On the 18th of March, a member of the public made a FOI request asking for a list of the councillors' names and political parties who voted for the reduction in concessionary rates. The FOI was rejected, and the applicant was directed to the minutes of the previous meeting and recording of the live stream, which are publicly available. The minutes of the meeting do not record this information, and the recording of the live stream only shows partial results before cutting away. As a result, this information is not publicly available, and in the spirit of the opening and transparency, as you went on about, I request that this report continues.
And that is indeed why... Sorry.
So why did you say that there's no need for it?
Sorry, hang on a second. Sorry, I said at the start, we're not going to have a debate over the form of vote that we take. A request has been made. Whatever my view of the request, it's a legitimate request, and we're going to take it in order to conclude the business orderly. And I hope the SNP group are similarly minded when it comes to the voting records of members of South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture. Is there another point of order from Councillor Loudon? Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. The voting records of board members at SLLC are currently confidential, whether you like it or not, and you refer to it over and over again, and it's been explained to you that board members, when they're acting on the board, act in the best interests of the leisure and culture, and when they're here, they have a different hat on. I don't know why you can't understand that, Chair. And please, as you have said, SLLC's papers are not public knowledge. They're not at the moment. Personally, I don't have any objection to them being open and transparent, but that's a decision for SLLC board. And what happens at SLLC board meetings is confidential currently. Thank you.
I think we've established that. Councillor Razak, and then I'm going to proceed to this vote. We've spent 2 items of urgent business. Councillor Razak.
Okay, apologies, Chair. I'll make this very quick since, you know, this vote's taking longer than the discussion. Firstly, I would say there was no formal voting in SLLC, so I don't think there'll be many minutes for the voting for it. And the second thing, just correction for Councillor Cowan, and the second thing is that the minutes are generic and there's no verbatim as well for the SLLC.
So it's a debate now about another item and it's not a point of order. I'm going to move to the vote. Okay.
Thanks, Chair. We've already gone through the proposers and seconders, so I'll just actually move straight to the voting preferences. Councillor Allison. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Brown. Councillor Carmichael. Councillor Chalmers. Sorry, I've brought on Councillor Miller by mistake. Councillor Chalmers, I'll put you back on.
Sorry, Pauline, amendment.
I'm just going to put Councillor Clark off at the moment, Councillor Miller off at the moment, and if you would come back in again when I call, thank you. Councillor Clark. Amendment. Councillor Convery. Motion. Councillor Cooper. Motion. Councillor Cowan. Amendment. Councillor Devlin.
Motion.
Motion. Councillor Fagan.
Motion.
Motion. Councillor Ferguson Miller.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor Hamilton. Motion. Councillor Horsham.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor Lambie. Motion. Councillor Logan. Motion. Councillor Loudon. Amendment. Councillor Hugh MacDonald. Councillor MacDonald, you're on, sorry.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor McCallan.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor McClymont. Motion. Councillor Leslie MacDonald. Councillor McGeever, I know that Councillor McGeever is having difficulties. I don't see that he is back on, and I don't see any request to speak from him, so there is nothing. There has been no electronic communication by text? No. Okay, thank you. Councillor McLachlan. Councillor Nelson. Motion. Councillor Razak. Motion. Councillor Robb. Amendment. Councillor Ross.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor Shearer. Councillor Shearer. Amendment. Thank you. Councillor Walker. Motion. We have 16 votes for the motion, 12 for the amendment, and the motion is declared carried, Chair.
Well done. Okay. So now we come to the minutes of the previous meeting. It's item 2. Can I ask, are there any questions on those minutes, arising from those minutes? Councillor Ross. So can I just, I'm going to make a point just now. Can I just ask everybody to wait until their microphone turns green before you start speaking? I heard the request, but not everyone will have. We've had a break there. I'm going to suggest that we take some items and then maybe take a break, probably about 15 minutes, if that's all right with people. Just given we have had, I know people are conferring, but we've had a break, and I know some people left at that point. So are people happy with us to take a break of 15 minutes? Right, okay. Are there any questions in the minutes of the previous meeting? Read the minutes. No, well, there are no questions. Can we then approve the minutes as a correct record? We're agreed. We have one monitoring item, which is item 3. Can I ask Paul Manning to speak to that paper? Paul.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is an item which comes to every committee. It's about the additional funding from the Scottish Government and other external sources. There are 2 items identified in here. One's an item of revenue funding. It is actually being added to year 2022-23, and you'll see from the description in Appendix 1, it's a contribution to Teachers' Pay Award for 2022-23. So that's come from the Scottish Government. It's £2.146 million. It's revenue money. On the following page, which is Appendix 2, you can see there's money which is capital funding, which is coming again from the Scottish Government for cycling, walking and safer routes, and that's an amount of £652,000. So again, happy to pick up any questions, Chair.
Are there any questions on that item? Not seeing any questions. Can I ask that we agree the report? Agreed. We're agreed. Can I come now to item 4 on the Glasgow City Region deal, the A72 Lanark Road and M74 Junction 7 signalisation, the full business case, and can I invite David Booth to speak to that item?
Thank you very much, Chair. Committee, this is bringing forward to the committee proposals for the full business case for the A72 Lanark M74 Junction 7 signalisation element of the Larkhall Community Area City Deal project. For the members' reference, this is as you go down the M74 heading south, this would be the junction you would take off. To go to Lanark, you come up the road, you would go left to Garine Bridge, so it's that junction there, and also coming from Lanark onto the M74 heading in the Hamilton direction, so that to give you the context of where that is. If proposed, then the works will be substantially funded through the Glasgow City Region City Deal initiative of part of the Larkhall Community Growth Area, as highlighted in section 3 of the report. A first level business case, which was a strategic business case, was approved by Executive Committee in 26 August 2015. And a second level business case, which was an outline business case, was approved by the Executive Committee on 8th of February 2017. Section 3.6 of the report details the next steps of the City Deal approval process, subject to this committee approving this paper. The proposal is outlined in Section 4 of the report, and the physical outputs of the project in 4.2. Essentially, it is new sets of traffic lights in that area to deal with the queues of traffic that back up onto the M74. It also involves resurfacing, improved street lighting and improved carriageways. The executive summary, which in the full business case is contained in Appendix 1 of the report. The project cost is £1.98 million, and that comprises of £1.703 million of City Deal funding, which is 86%, and £277,000 of council funding, which accounts for 14% of the project. The approval of the full business case would release the funds to meet these costs. The construction contract for this is expected to commence, if approved, at the end of July. and it is anticipated that it would complete around about the end of the calendar year. There are no direct employee implications from the project. And in terms of the financial implications, I've highlighted the revenue implications associated with the project have been included in the Council's regional budget strategy for 2023-24. Sections 7, 8 and 9 outline the climate change, other implications and the consultation arrangements that have been undertaken so far. And if I refer committee back to the recommendations, which are at 2.1 of the report, and that is that the A72 Lanark Road M74 Junction 7 signalisation full business case is approved and that the grant funding be sought in accordance with the City Deal grant distribution process. Thank you.
Thank you. It'd be helpful if anyone has any wants to come in this item, if you could indicate now, rather than as it develops, just in order to help get through the remainder of the agenda as efficiently as possible. Could I come in the first instance to Councillor Clark?
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to David for that report. I'd just very much like to welcome this. It's been a long time coming, and the people of Larkhall know about the problems there all too well. Even since before I was a councillor, as a resident for many years, I encountered problems there personally of traffic backing up, and it's something that has been raised to myself, again, even before I was elected by residents as a problem. So I'm glad something has been done about it and it has been moved on swiftly. So just to welcome this, thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I come to Councillor Hamilton?
Thanks, Chair. Again, as a Clydesdale councillor, this is very welcome, considering it affects a lot of the Clydesdale councillors in here and also our constituents. This is a highly used junction, and as much as it seems to be the Larkhall part that's a bigger issue, then it does help our constituents as well. The only point that I would make is that the constituents in my ward and Councillor McClymont's ward have had years and years of disruption through the Horsley Brae and Garrion Bridge, which has been a massive bone of contention, and I would please ask that the councillors from Clydesdale are kept updated, considering the amount of disruption that this is going to cause, and if there's any slippage in the slightest, can we please be told about it ASAP, because our constituents have quite frankly been through enough recently. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see the Director is nodding to say that we'll include Clydesdale councillors in the updates on the work as it progresses. Could I come now to Councillor Leslie MacDonald?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, David. Really, I'm just going to repeat everything that has already been said. Having been one of the many people who sit on the M74 waiting to access and turn, whether it's left or right, I certainly welcome this. And thank you. I'd spoken recently with Roads and Transportation and was assured that this was coming now, and I'm absolutely delighted about it. Thank you. And the sooner it starts, the better, and is completed, the better. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Could I come to Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to go over what everybody's already said. It's been a long time coming and it will make such a difference. However, it is noted that the City Deal funding element of the total project is 86% of the project cost, which David just already alluded to, with the Council contributing 14% of that balance. There appears to be no community benefit money identified for this. Can I request information on where the community benefit money is being spent if it isn't on this project?
Can I ask David Booth to pick that point up?
So thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Nelson. The City Deal project for the community growth area, this is one of the community benefit projects. This is one of the projects for the community benefit. There were a number of education and a number of roads benefits that were identified a number of years ago. As you know, this goes back to 2015. So this is one of those community benefit projects.
Here you go.
Thank you, David. It doesn't reference that part within the paper that it's community benefit funding, and I just would like a breakdown of where that community funding has been spent in Larkhall, so we can actually see what we're actually getting for the wealth of the local community. So it's not part of that paper. You didn't, I know you're saying that, but it doesn't mention that as part of that in there, and I would like to see a breakdown of how that money, that community benefit money, has been spent in Larkhall.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Nelson, I'm happy to provide to yourself and other Larkhall councillors a breakdown of the City Deal funding in terms of the community growth area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could I come to Alec Allison?
I'm a wee bit confused. I'm sure it's just my stupidity, and I'll let you explain me, Paul, where I usually go wrong. The one sense you're telling us that we've had a tendering procurement exercise, but we're still only estimating the cost of the lighting, and that we will be responsible for any financial overruns. But if it's been tendered, how can there be any financial overruns? And secondly, at point 15 on page 20, it says an allowance of 25% has been made within the cost profile, and yet this contract is awarded on a fixed price basis. Surely that margin is excessive if we have a fixed price contract for doing this. And how can we have overruns if we've had a competitive tender?
David.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Allison. So we're now entering into more of the procurement side of matters here, so a bit less, a bit more shaky on this. But in terms of for any of these procurement projects, there is normally a percentage of figure that's set aside for if the project's overrun. You'll be aware that many projects that we've been dealing with, capital projects over the last number of years, have had to increase due to increased costs. Some of those costs need to be borne by the client, which is in our case is the council, rather than the contractor, because when they're quoting for a contract at a moment in time, there are certain things that can be out with their control. So there is usually in these situations when we've got contracts of this sort of nature, big capital programme, that we have an allocation of money that's set aside that is to deal with additional works that are required as a result of the contract or an increase in prices.
Right, so basically what you're saying is that funding needs to be there in case there's other issues come up during the construction period that have not been quoted for.
If there are issues that come up during the construction, or if there's changes in terms of pricing that would sit with the client, this is no different. That is normal in terms of any major capital project. It's not specifically just to this type of project.
And the need for a 25% allowance seems excessive.
The markets are incredibly volatile at the moment, as I'm sure you'll be aware, in terms of the costs of materials, the costs of energy, etc. So we've put in what we think that is a reasonable contingency.
Okay. Can I come to Eileen Logan?
Thanks very much, Chair. I don't think we could ever appreciate, and I don't think it's really ever been appreciated properly, the effect that the lights at the Garrion Bridge coming up into the Clydesdale area, what that has meant for people. Because if you were coming here of a morning, you were setting out about 2 hours before, but you can actually now, even at peak times, get down 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just depending what you hit at this side. So that has been excellent. And my colleague, Lindsay, did say we met all sorts of trouble, so it is good that we will be kept in the loop. I'm not a technical person as such, but from my years of travelling up and down, yep, the right-hand side going to Larkhall can be down at the motorway, but the Clydesdale side's, moving up and getting on. And even at night, it can be very quiet. Will these be phased light? You know how at the motorway there, you see a sign saying phase lights, or whatever the terminology is, when peak times, peak travel? Because it would seem a wee bit silly if, say, at 10 o'clock at night, you were all getting held up when it was when there was nothing there to be held up for. So I was just wondering if that was, would that be the case? It is bad junctions, and I've seen people being impatient and crying. So I think it's 100% right that we're going to do it, but that's what I wondered, because you can see it for yourself. It is a peak time problem, basically.
Okay, David.
Same as the Garrion was.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much, Councillor Logan. As I understand it, these lights operate on a loop system, so they're connected to sort of cameras that loop back down, so that if there isn't a queue, then they would automatically be sitting as green, and then if there is a queue as it goes up, they amend to allow the traffic to flow dependent on the traffic.
Okay, thank you. There are no other points, and my only point would just be to probably reflect the thing that only came up at the end there, which is actually the safety benefits of some of that investment. Can I ask that we agree the report? We're agreed. I'm going to take a 10-minute break now, and we can reconvene at 22. Sorry, at 22. 22. 22. And I'm going to come to item 5, which is an update on the proposal to conduct a consultation to realign the catchment areas of Glengowan Primary, Mackinhill Primary and Robert Smiley Primary Schools in Lark Hall. And I'm going to ask Tony McDade to speak to that item.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the paper is to propose to conduct a consultation for some of our catchment areas for Glengowan Primary, Mackinhill Primary and Robert Smiley Primary. You'll see from section 3, this in fact is in essence a re-endorsement of an activity that has taken place previously. The proposal was put to the Executive Committee on the 25th of March 2020. It was originally approved by the Chief Executive in consultation with group leaders, as the full Executive Committee wasn't able to meet due to the onset of the pandemic. However, as a result of the national lockdown and the legislative inability to undertake a public meeting, we've not been able to get to that consultation activity itself. And obviously with the time that's been elapsed, we felt it was appropriate to come back to the committee for the purposes of re-endorsement today. You'll see further in section 3.5 some of the reasoning behind the catchment proposal as well through Glengowan, Mackinhill and Robert Smiley. Appendix 1 identifies the 2 main housing developments within the Lark Hall area that link to Mackinhill Primary School and some of the pressures that they'll see coming in the next couple of years, and then some of the geographical realignment that we'll look at, and we do this from time to time as well. Section 3.7 and Section 3.8 outline some of those numbers, and indeed that's through to Section 3.10 of the paper. The proposal is outlined in Section 4, which is there's an alignment between a realignment between Mackinhill Primary and Glengowan Primary School, and that's around the Lark Hall CGA development, be rezoned from the Mackinhill area to Glengowan. And then in section 4.3, we highlight some of the work from Mackinhill Primary School to Robert Smiley Primary School as well, and that's been outlined. And so you'll see the way in which we're realigning the numbers to make sure we have resourcing and we have capacity in the 3 schools. It's just about sometimes that we will take local areas and try to realign, and the reasoning behind them, and that we do have that physical capacity. Section 8 outlines the way in which we would move the proposal forward, remembering that this is only a consultation. At the moment, this is not a decision. The decision comes back to the Executive Committee, and there's of course a commitment that we would, if the proposal goes ahead, the timescales are there for to go through the enrolment process in January 2024 for session 24-25. Of course, families that are already with children in either school, we keep that commitment that they're able to be maintained and to go to their school that they're already at, or a sibling is at as well. There are formal consultation activities and public meetings to fully engage with the community. And if I can refer the committee back to section 2.1, Chair, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much. Can I ask if anyone wants to come in on this item, if you can indicate now? And can I come to Richard Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tony. I do understand this is out for consultation, but I think it would be pertinent to me just to bring some issues and concerns to you at this stage, because I do think the changes to the school catchment areas is overdue, given the new housing areas in Lark Hall. However, it does seem that the increase in pupil capacity in Glencowan is huge in comparison with other local schools. I would like to know if there's any other primary schools across South Lanarkshire with over 500 pupils, and why that is. Is this just due to housing? Is it also South Lanarkshire Council's plan to allow capacity increases across the patch rather than build new schools? And what is the optimum size of a primary school in Scotland to enable young people to have the best experience? Lastly, in regards to Glengowan, that increase will lead in numbers, which will inevitably lead to an increase in car journeys, where there's already major concerns in that area at specific times. Can I ask what steps will be put in place to ensure the safety of pupils with such an increase?
Tony?
Thanks, Councillor Nelson. Maybe just a couple of things. Yes, Curtin Home, Newton Farm and Mossnuke are schools of comparable size, around the 500 mark. We have schools where we're fortunate. We have both urban and rural schools. So the optimum level of a school is that it manages to provide opportunity for children and allow them to flourish. It's not about the structure. So in actual fact, the way in which schools, the bigger the school,
then obviously the management structure is in place to do that. So in essence, it doesn't matter whether that school is a very small school. We will stick to those class sizes. That's what guide us. So whether the schools are 500, they will still have 33 to a teacher, and that's the same in some of our small and rural schools as well. So in essence, we will have successful schools that are small, given the rurality potentially, and also have larger schools. There is no optimum size. It is about the individual child and fitting within that community itself. So we do that. We take the point, this is the consultation activity, and I'm grateful for the comments you've made. I suppose the other thing around school travel, the school travel plan is part of that consideration of that consultation activity, and we would ask for the families to be engaged, but you will see from the paper itself, this is all within the boundary of a mile, is pretty much how we're looking at the realigning. So much of it's within walking distance, as opposed to it being car journeys, although we do realise that that's not always the case, as you will all see on a day-to-day basis. But hopefully the consultation activity is the essence of some of the questions that you've asked today.
Katie Loudon.
Thanks, Chair. This looks like a very sensible proposal to pick this up again now after the pandemic. My question actually partially relates to Councillor Nelson's, because Glengowan had jumped out to me as well. So the question was about on page 25, where we've got table 4.2 with the projected future roles. And Glengowan, for example, projected future role was 588 and the physical capacity was 594, which jumped out as looking quite tight. So I just wondered what the predicted timescale for that projected future role being reached was. Are we talking over the first year after any catchment change, over the next few years? And are we confident that that would reach a stable position and we wouldn't be in a position that we've been in other areas, including in my own ward, where we've then had to go and build an extension, essentially? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Loudon, you're quite right. We are looking at it really closely. We don't believe it will happen immediately, just in terms of the way in which the growth has come about. And actually, that's why it's probably, we're coming to it now 3 years later, because we haven't seen that specific growth, or indeed that intensity of growth as we've seen elsewhere. So we do believe that there's a longer lead into that as well. We've also tried to make sure we've looked at the outward projections of the numbers, rather than believing that we're being minimalist in that approach. We've tried to suggest that these numbers would be at the maximum end. And if we remember in some of the other activities, this is about managing a spike. In numbers, quite often you'll get a spike over a period of time and then it settles down. The pattern of that is to manage that spike. And even in the very worst case scenarios, there is sufficient space within the building. Although we say 594, that's within the existing activity. You could do further activity to actually extend that, although we wouldn't want to do that.
Thank you. If there's no other points, can I ask that we agree the report? Agreed. Okay, can I come now to item 6, which is the outcome of the review of the Safer South Lanarkshire Board, and can I ask Stephen Gibson to speak to this item? Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update the Executive Committee on the outcome of the review of the Safer South Lanarkshire Board that was undertaken in 22-23, and to seek a approval for a revised set of terms of reference. Section 3 gives a background. It confirms that following the launch of the new community plan for 2022-23, the Community Planning Board requested the review of the terms of reference. This followed the restructure of the thematic groups and their reporting requirements. And as part of that, they felt there was a bit of duplication between the existing groups that were already reporting. Section 4 of the report just confirms that South Lanarkshire Council's Housing and Technical Resource provides the administration for the Safer South Lanarkshire Board, and therefore we carried out that review. The review was taken over a period of almost 12 months. It involved consultation with stakeholders and community groups. We spoke to people about the existing frameworks and the way things were working in practice. And the outcome of it was that there was a request for us to refocus on the three things that really would underpin the establishment of Safer South Lanarkshire Board. and that was scrutiny of fire, scrutiny of police, and a focus on our statute requirements in relation to the antisocial behaviour strategy. Section 5 really just summarises the outcome of it. And what we're asking for within this report is for the Executive Committee to approve this report with the recommendations which have been endorsed by the Community Planning Partnership, by Safer South Lanarkshire Board, and subject to approval, approve the new sets of terms of reference which would become effective from tomorrow. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. If there are any questions on this item, can I ask that you indicate now? And if there are not, can I ask that we agree the recommendations in the report? Now, we agreed. We're agreed. Can I come now to item 7 on land and property disposals, and again ask Stephen Gibson to speak to that item.
Thanks, Chair. This is a short report. It summarises a list of proposed disposals. There are six proposed disposals in Appendix A, 3 from the Housing Revenue Account and 3 from the General Fund. If you look at it, 5 of the 6 disposals are in relation to extensions of gardens, or in one case an extension of a garden with a bit of driveway as well. The 6th disposal is in relation to a very small area of land. It's 1.8 square metres, and that's for the introduction of a gas governor, and that piece of land would be sold to a utility company. So the financial implications are, of course, that subject to approval, there'll be a financial benefit in the form of a capital receipt to the HRA and to the General Fund. There are no staffing implications, there are minor financial implications and no climate change implications for this report. So subject to approval by committee today, we'd be able to move forward with the final negotiations and allow us to proceed with the disposal of the 6 assets.
Okay, are there anyone want to come in on that item? I see nobody. Can we agree the recommendations? Agreed. Can I come now to item 8 on representation in outside bodies, and can I invite Geraldine McCann to speak to the report?
Thank you, Chair. This report just seeks one change to the representation on the Safer South Lanarkshire Board, and that is to replace Councillor Gray with Councillor Cowan, and that request came from the business manager of the SNP Group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If there are no questions on that item, can I ask that we agree the report? We're agreed. Next item is item 9, which is external representation on the Education Resources Committee, and can I invite Tony McDade to speak to the report? Tony.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to provide an update on the appointment of representatives other than councillors to serve on the Education Committee. This is about our parent representatives, and you'll see from section 4 we've gone through a process that now identifies 2 appropriate parent reps, and the committee is asked to approve the recommendation and the appointment of those 2 representatives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If there are no questions on that item, can I ask that we agree the report? We're agreed. Can I come now to item 10, which is recommendations referred from Resources Committee, and again can I ask Geraldine McCann to speak to that item? Geraldine.
Thank you, Chair. These recommendations come from the Education Resources Committee on the 2nd of May, seeking approval of the review of admissions policy for early learning and childcare establishments 2023. And the second one is from the Finance and Corporate Resources Committee on 3rd of May, and recommending approval of the procurement strategy. The details are provided in extracts from the minutes of both committees, which are in section 3 and 4 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Geraldine. Can I ask if there are any comments on this item? I have one from Kirsten Robb. Kirsten.
Thank you. After reading the procurement strategy, I emailed in to request a tightening up of the wording around the living wage. Want to clarify that it is the real living wage we're seeking to promote in contracts, in line with Scottish Government aims to make this mandatory, and our own aims as a council on community wealth building as well. It's an important difference between the living wage, which is which was previously the minimum wage, now renamed by the UK government, and the real living wage, particularly for young people. And it's important that we use our spending power so that local people get a real living wage for a decent day's work.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Robb. Can I ask, I think Craig Ferguson is going to respond to that point. Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the question there. Just to clarify, we're quite happy just to make that small change to the procurement strategy, just to make that distinction between living wage and real living wage, acknowledging that at times the terms can be used interchangeably, but a small change, and happy to make that prior to publication.
Thank you. And can I ask the committee, with that clarification around the terminology that will be used in the reports, are we happy to agree the item? We are agreed. Can I come now to items for noting? This is an item for noting. It is the South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture Strategy for 2022 to 2027. And can I invite David Booth to speak to that item?
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is a report for noting to advise the committee on South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture Strategy for 2022 to 2027. The report is in two parts. One part is to advise about the strategy, and the second part is to advise a committee on the development of a commissioning plan for the delivery of leisure and cultural services. Taking the leisure and cultural strategy as itself, in terms of background, a cross-party working group on a review of leisure and culture provision approved at committee on the 23rd of June 2021 new modernised governance arrangements, which they have led to SLLC converting to a Scottish Charitable Incorporated Organisation, or a SCIO, which happened on the 3rd of April 2023. And as part of that process of bringing together new documentation, SLLC have been developing a new strategy which was approved by their board on the 22nd of June last year and has now been presented to this committee for noting. In terms of Section 4, it details how the strategy was developed. And I should point out that this strategy is deliberately broad in its context. It's a very top-level strategy. And what it does, as contained in Section 4.3 and 4.4, is it sets very broad strategic objectives which have been designed to align with the Council Plan Connect, which runs 2022 to 27, and the South Lanarkshire Communities Plan, which is 2022 to 2032. So the purpose of this strategy really is to make sure that the broad strategic direction of SLLC is aligned with the direction of the Council and the direction of the Community Plan. Section 5 covers the monitoring and implementation of the strategy, and SSL have established a number of groups which are developing new key performance indicators against each of the 4 themes that are contained in 4.3 of the report. These will be reported against the new strategy and will be included as part of the Community and Enterprise Resources Plan for 2023-24. In terms now of turning to a commissioning plan, again, in line with the SLC's conversion to a SCIO, the Council is now taking the opportunity to develop a commissioning plan for SLLC, and this will be presented to Executive Committee for approval later this year. The aim of the commissioning plan will be to define the Council's ask of SLLC over the medium and longer term to help ensure that leisure and cultural services remain accessible and sustainable while taking account of available and projected Council funding. The commissioning plan will also review and update an existing suite of documentation which defines the relationship between the Council and SLC, including service level agreements and other related documentation. And the proposal is that there will be engagement before the recess with elected members about in order to harvest their views about what the leisure and culture provision should look like as we move forward. Moving back to the recommendation is that the committee notes the SLC strategy 2022 to 2027. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just given time, if anyone's going to come in on this item, can I ask you to indicate now, again, just as I said earlier, so we can get through the item as quickly as possible, because there are a number of questions. Can I come in the first instance to Margaret Walker?
Thanks, Chair. It's just in relation to page 13, where it refers to developing a business model in order to promote organisational sustainability and to optimise funding and income. Given, obviously, the discussion earlier, I mean, obviously, that's an action that I would think should be prioritised. Do we have a timescale for that in relation to when that will be presented to the committee for agreement? Because obviously in relation to the issues we've been talking about in terms of identifying alternative funding streams, and particularly in relation to energy companies and getting them to, to contribute to culture and leisure and to the massive energy costs that clubs, etc., and swimming pools, etc., gyms, whatever, are actually now facing. I mean, I think it's now become, fairly urgent that we have the development of the business model in terms of how we're going to take some of that forward, which was the point of the reference to the energy companies in the motion that was agreed today, rather than the irrelevance in terms of this meeting as to who's responsible for high energy costs. So really my question is in relation to have a timescale for that. Thank you.
David.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. As the Council goes through its process of looking at its financial outlook, we'll be working over the next year or so really closely with South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culturists to understand how much funding the Council is able to contribute to SLLC's provision. SLLC will also be looking at that as well as the way it generates income and it looks at its energy costs. And you're right to highlight that energy costs have spiked dramatically. As part of that process, there will be the development of the SLC's approach to funding to ensure it remains in a sustainable position to move forward. So as part of the process of through the commissioning, and because we can only commission based on the amount of available resources we'll be able to give to SLC, there will be engagement and we will be reporting back through that process later within this year how that model is developing.
Okay, can I come to Ross Lambie?
Thanks, Chair. Given that the Leisure Trust is charged with the care of so many of our cherished heritage buildings and assets, it's disappointing to see that the word heritage doesn't appear in this strategy document at all. And indeed, culture barely gets a mention either. I fear it's indicative of a situation where many of our heritage assets are overlooked or some willfully neglected, with the tourism and business development opportunities potential of them lost. Not to mention the damage to our collective civic pride for seeing cultural landmarks in a state of dilapidation. I'll give one quick example. The Keeper's Lodge, which is a listed building which sits adjacent to the Hamilton Mausoleum in the centre of Hamilton, is under the care of the Leisure Trust owned by the Council. Notable for its outstanding stonework, rich cultural history. Don't have time to go into it today. This building was handed back to the Council by the Park Ranger Service in a watertight condition, having previously been used as an office. Since then, since the Council took it back and it was under SLC's management, it's declined and it's now a derelict shell. So I'm therefore compelled to ask a simple question today. Does this Executive Committee accept it has a legal obligation under the Planning, Listed Building and Conservation Areas Scotland Act 1997 to maintain the listed buildings which it owns? Thanks.
I think I'm going to come to David Booth to deal with that question. David.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Lambert. I would point out and say that in terms of that particular building as well, the SLLC is not responsible for the capital of those buildings and the condition of it. It's responsible for running the services. And in terms of the Council's responsibility in terms of listed buildings, it has certain obligations on it, but it is dependent on the resources that the Council has at its disposal. In terms of the specifics around about that facility as well, in many facilities they can be continue to be made safe and in a condition of, so there are many ruins in South Lanarkshire, for example, and the obligations in terms of them listed buildings is just to make sure that those facilities remain safe, rather than there's no obligation on it to bring them back into the other form of operational use. So that's really where it depends what resources the council has at its disposal, and it would be responsible for managing those in a managed way in that basis.
Can we come back? What's the RL?
Yeah, just to make the point really that, you know, blaming financial resource doesn't work under that law. Private owners who own listed buildings are equally obliged to maintain their buildings. And it's worth pointing out that it was handed over in a wind, watertight and usable state, and it's become dilapidated under the stewardship of the recent times. And that's because there's been a £0 budget applied to it come the sunny days and the rainy days. So I'd like just a simple answer really. Do we accept to have a legal obligation to maintain our listed buildings under that Act?
I'm going to come to the Chief Executive to follow that point up. Councillor Lambie.
Thanks, Chair. And I think Councillor Lambie opens up an interesting debate here. It gives me an opportunity just to provide a reminder that we've all shared. This council does not have the resources that it needs to have to maintain all of the assets that it's responsible for. The council has a whole range of statutory obligations for services, for assets and for a whole range of other things. The challenge for members is to determine where you place your resources, because you cannot meet every single obligation you've got. So therefore, this is the core challenge that every member in this chamber faces about prioritising investment. And it will be for members ultimately to determine where you put your money, because I come back to this, you have far too big an asset base and far too many statutory obligations and far too small a budget, both in revenue and capital, to support this. So the challenge that Councillor Lambie puts to the whole chamber is one that you're all going to have to face up to, not just for this year, but for years going forward, because the projections only make those challenges more difficult. It's a really important point that he makes.
Thank you. Well, echoing what the Chief Executive and what officials have heard, I have to say that's an issue that has been brought to my attention as well, a specific one of the Innkeepers Lodge. I'm going to bring David McLaughlin in at this point, because I think he's indicated he wants in on this particular issue. But this issue, because I'm trying to get through the issues that are the matters that are coming up, and I don't want to take any more contributions. So, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I fully appreciate my colleagues' concerns, and we would love to see the Keeper's House given as much resources as it needs to keep it as an asset where people want to come and see it. But I don't recall when it was transferred and when it was wind and watertight, but my last time I visited the Keeper's Lodge, the subsidence is so bad that it couldn't possibly be wind and watertight regardless of what you've done with it. So, not an engineer, I know that Ross has got some experience in this, but the way that I see this particular building, the only thing that you could do to try and prevent it from getting further dilapidated is some serious engineering works underground to try and support it, because the subsidence is basically what's caused the whole building to fall out of alignment, and it's just impossible to try and patch that up, as I can see it with my limited knowledge of it. Maybe Ross has got more experience on it, but I do share his concerns. I would love to see that, but we need to be realistic about what resources we have available and trying to run services that we've got, and we just don't have that kind of sum of money to try and do the necessary engineering works that's required for that. I don't think, but I think what Cleland has said is more or less sort of backed that up. Thanks, Chair.
Right, thank you. So the point has been made, and I'm sure that's a discussion that will continue elsewhere outside the chamber. Can I maybe just revert back now to the strategy that we've got in front of us, the strategic document, and I'll work my way through the people who've still to ask a question. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that this piece of paper is just for noting. However, just some points to portray, if I may. Agenda item 11 sets out South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture strategic objectives for the next 5 years, which are based on the themes of health and wellbeing, connected and engaged, equality and inclusion, and organisational sustainability. I might be a little bit cynical, Chair, about this, but given some recent decisions and the current state of Larkhall Leisure Centre, which I'm sure most of you are all here aware of, If we are serious about the aforementioned objectives, then why don't we start to put the spade in the ground and get this built? It will benefit so many people in South Lanarkshire, not just in my own ward, and I hear the concerns of the funding gap, but let's just get it moving. And to finish off, Chair, I also think we seriously need to start thinking outside the box going forward, being open to different ways of working with less red tape, partnership working with local businesses, listening to them in new ways. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, which I'm sure have been noted. Can I come now to Councillor Allison?
Thanks, Chair. First of all, David, it was very pleasing to hear in the strategy that you're talking about legal documents such as the service level agreement needs to be finalised, basically. I'm less sure that it's going to happen because that has been on the agenda for 2018, was it? There you go. 2019. Many years anyway. And I think we need to follow that up and not just as part of the Leisure Trust strategy, but from the Council's point of view, make it urgently, because I think a lot of the issues maybe that we're having, we're certainly going to have, will come into context of these agreements. Secondly, just a wee bit lateral thinking, we supplied funding last year for warm rooms. Is there a report coming back to the Council on where that money was spent and the effectiveness of it, either here or one of the other committees?
I believe there is, but does anyone want to pick up the other issues from Councillor Allison?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Allison. Yes, as part of this commission, what piece of work that's be carried out over the forthcoming months will be reported back to committee. We'll be developing this new service level agreement, which again will be based on service level commissioning document. There are a suite of documents that are required to be in place in order to properly define the correct relationship between the Council and South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture, including the work that's already been done on this, which is about the setting up of the SKIO and all the documentation that surrounds that. So yes, the work has been underway in terms of that and will continue over the next year and will be reported back to this chamber either through executive or full council. Sorry, just is that you suggesting that we'll hear conclusively that these agreements have been made within the next year? Well, I'll certainly be updating committee's progress as we progress through that.
I think Paul Manning was going to come in to
warm
pick up.
rooms.
I think Paul Manning was going to come in to pick this up.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Allison. Between September and November last year, the committee approved a number of initiatives that were intended to help address the cost of living crisis. One of them was the Warm Welcome Initiative, and what we are working on is a paper to come back to this committee that will outline how that money was spent and what was achieved through those initiatives. Councillor Allison.
Thank you.
Okay, can I come now to John Ross?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And thanks, David, for that report. You're quite right, at this point in time, it's very high level, very little meat in the bone. And I'll be really interested to see the ideas that we have when we come to the commissioning side of things. I hope that we're going to engage as widely as possible during that commissioning period and find out the views of as many people as we can before we start looking at what our ask is of SLLC and what SLLC will be able to provide. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Your points have been noted. Can I come to Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. I wondered if it would be, I think there's this is a third sector organisation, am I right in that? It's a standalone organisation now. And there's two separate issues coming to the forefront for me. One is the strategy, which we've got a copy of this morning. And the second one is the commissioning plan and the future engagement through a service level agreement with Leisure and Culture. And I wondered whether consideration had ever been given to inviting along the Chief Executive of Leisure and Culture to report on a strategy paper such as this. Because my understanding is, and no offence to you, David, you don't manage Leisure and Culture now You have an overview of what's going on there. There is a relationship under a memorandum of understanding, but that leisure and culture is managed by the Chief Executive. And it would be good, welcome certainly from me, if the Chief Executive came along as invited to present such a strategy paper, because it's leisure and culture that have devised the strategy paper. The separate issue of the commissioning plan is one that seems to clearly fall within your own remit as Director of Community and Enterprise, and you're engaging a link with leisure and culture and forming an ask from South Lanarkshire Council, which is then presented to leisure and culture. But I would like to see the differentiation between your own role as not as the manager of leisure and culture as you formerly were, but as the link between South Lanarkshire Council and leisure and culture, and that the Chief Executive, and perhaps even if she wished to bring the chair of the board with her, that they would be invited along to present such a strategy paper. As Councillor Ross said, the meat isn't on the bones yet, but it does give councillors an opportunity when a high-level strategy is being presented, such as this, to ask some high-level questions of where their thoughts are coming from. I just wondered if we could give consideration to that, please, for the future.
Yeah, I'm going to, I think there's a useful suggestion in there, and what I would say I've shared with group leaders, but we'll share with the committee more generally, that I've requested an engagement session for all councillors and the management team at South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture in advance of this commissioning plan being developed, because I think it's important that we have a shared understanding about the strategic direction in which they are heading. I'm going to see if David wants to pick up on Councillor Cooper's remarks.
Sorry. Yes. So as the chair has indicated there, the exercise we hope to intend with bringing all the councillors together I'd hope to do that pre-summer break, and included in that would be senior management from South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture. So was the other process. In terms of the Chief Executive of South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture coming to this committee at key stages to report on that, then I think she would be happy to do so if the committee would wish to do that. And we've had, we had the police in at the last committee talking about that. So I think that personally, I think that's a good idea. But it's one for the committee. Just
a few other words. There are two quite distinct things here, and actually it's probably two papers. One paper is Leisure and Culture presenting their strategy, and I feel personally that the Chief Executive of Leisure and Culture and perhaps our chair of the board want to do that themselves. And the second distinct paper is obviously the commissioning strategy and your work with as a part of their team to get South Lanarkshire Council to the point that we've got a realistic ask of leisure and culture given their budgets. So I would have seen this as two papers today, and it's just a suggestion for the future.
Thanks. I think we'll take that
Thanks, Chair.
on board. Thank you. Can I come now to Councillor Robb?
Thank you. We've talked a bit about assets today, so given the close relationship between SLC and SLLC on the use of assets and the implications for our communities, can you give an update on the process and timescale for the asset review? And the second question is, given the concerns on the recent process and the concessionary fairs, can I ask what standards of community engagement will guide future SLLC work on this so that we get good conversations at the right time to inform a really strong strategy? But it's important to have those standards of community engagement written down. Thank you.
Thank you. I think to almost pick up the point from Councillor Cooper, we don't have anyone from SLLC here to answer for themselves directly, but if David wants to pick up the point, or if anyone else wants to pick up the point about the timing of the asset review as well. But David.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Robb. In terms, I can speak specifically about the asset review. So a review group has been pulled together. So officers have been pulled together and are spending some dedicated time on that just now. Now, again, that process, we want to do this in fairly short order, given the, you know, the decisions that might need that faces in the future, and given some of the conversations we've had about the condition of our assets and the amount of them that we have. So, as I say, the group itself has been pulled together. It's got representation on it from my own resource, from Housing and Technical Resources, to give technical information, and also there's an officer from South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture on that group as well, in order to give that context about the operational review. The group is currently developing some initial proposals which will come to myself, and then will be taken to the corporate management team for an understanding of about the direction, and then at key stages as we go through there will be engagement with councillors on a ward by ward basis and through relevant either community and enterprise resources or other committees as well as required. So the process is still at an early stage, but we have identified people and they are now working on those assets at the moment. In terms of the second point about communication, I'm not in a position to answer that at the moment, as about what the communication would be in the future as we move forward. But I think SLLC are aware of the need to be communicating with our communities and their members as much as possible.
Okay, I think Councillor Robb, you want to follow up?
And the timescale for the asset review, if you have it, I know it's a big job, and it was rather than communication, it was proper community engagement, because that's, you know, I think the capacity building side could really be helped by that side. So it's rather than communication, which is a bit of a two-way thing, it's more community engagement and proper consultation.
David?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Robb. So in terms of timescales for I'm not in a position at this stage to give you an overall timescale for the review of property, because I'll get that once I get an initial report. As I say, once we've got that initial report, we've went to the corporate management team. I'm happy either through my own committee or through one of these committees to advise on the full timescale, as I'll know it then. It's been scoped up at the moment, as you understand. There's a lot of work involved in that. And in terms of community engagement, I'm happy to take that on and feed it into the South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture Board.
Okay, there are no other questions. My only remarks from myself just in closing here are that I think this issue of South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture is one of the, to me, the trickiest confronting the council because of some of those governance issues which we spoke about earlier on. But the issue that's much easier to understand is that there has been a legacy of underinvestment, a chronic underfunding of this local authority. And remember the figures in relation to our capital budget position, a 24% cut to our capital budget that I think is unprecedented. Those are the challenges. We can't duck the challenges. We've got to work through them. And the challenge for us, and I think some of these constructive suggestions that have been made about future engagement between the council and the board, are how we get to a place where we can do it, and we have a shared strategy that we both own and can both take forward. There are no other questions or no other points, and there's no other business. So at this point, I will bring this meeting to a close. And do we have an idea at what point the council will begin?
12:25. If we could try to convene the full council meeting at 25:02 with a 10-minute recess in between this meeting and the next one.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Swap
Thanks.
places. Thank you.